Hello guys, I just wanted to showcase a different way of doing the sprinting mechanic without having to resort to a script. Now, there is a finite state machine command which is called Playerspeed that you can use with your finite state machine, so this is especially useful on weapons or even enemies that could potentially debuff your speed, for example. In this case, I'm using the player speed on certain weapons in order to give myself a movement speed buff. Now, I've tried using a sprint script before, and it does work, but I kind of wanted something that's a bit more situational. There's also the possibility that I can make some sort of weapon that gives you a temporary buff. I would just have to like figure out how to do that with delta time, but I'd rather have something that's a sprint that's more circumstantial where you use it, and not so much that you can have it on at all times. So having to use a specific weapon seems to be good enough for the purposes of what I'm going for. So as you can see over here, I use the draw state specifically because as soon as you draw the weapon, for the most part, you get the change in player speed almost immediately, which makes it activate really fast. So on weapon draw, I have it change the player speed. In this case, this is the weapon called Spike, which is the first weapon. The first weapon does not grant you any player speed, that's why it's 1, which is normal speed. But then I have a weapon called the Handsaw, which on the draw, you can see that it changes to player speed 1.5. Now, if I showcase what happens in the actual game itself, and I'm gonna put that over here, let me see if I'm actually seeing the game. And yes, I am. Let's go full screen, if this actually works. Yeah, there we go. We go full screen. You can see that I have normal speed with the first weapon, but I changed to the other one, and I immediately get the movement buff, or the speed change, when I change to a different character. Now I believe, let me just to be 100% sure, yeah, this only controls the movement speed. Now, the problem that there would be with this in particular is if you wanted to make like some kind of enemy debuff, you'd basically have a weapon that's preventing you from being affected by the debuff. However, the way that you would circumvent this would be probably for it to be, if the enemy is affecting you with a debuff, have it affect you very often, but the problem is as soon as you would change to a different weapon, it would completely erase the player debuff that the enemy is putting on you, if you wanted to use player speed as a debuff, that is. So there's always that as a problem. So, and the reason why I say that is because maybe you would want to have like a slow effect. I remember that on my first prototype I had a player speed being used as an attack on the enemy, and it doesn't do any damage, but it does slow you down. So that's one way of using it. But either way, I think there are games, and I remember specifically, for example, was it Counter-Strike, where switching over to the dagger is faster? Let me just make sure. Dagger faster, Counter-Strike movement speed. Let me just make sure. Yep, it grants the highest movement speed. So it's kind of like that, and you can kind of do that here. So that's food for thought. So this is just a little video about the player speed. So it's nothing revolutionary. I'm not really bringing up anything new or showcasing anything that's too different, but this is an idea for people. You have range weapons and melee weapons. You can have certain melee weapons be faster, while you have others where the player's movement speed is slower. And movement speed can be used in order to create all matters of situations, because instead of having a weapon be there just for damage, now they also have a little bit of utility as well, where movement speed, if you can get away from an opponent faster, well, that gives you another reason to use the weapon. Whether or not that's the best way to make a weapon, I'll leave it to you, but I hope that this idea ends up helping someone. If you don't want to use a running script like the one from TJ's template, you can always do this instead. Maybe you want certain weapons to be faster than others. Giving you faster movement speed than others, and this is always an option. You just use the draw state, and you have it so on weapon switch, it changes your movement speed. There you have it.